You know, the incredible thing, though, when you talk about the odds, you had to be exactly at that angle. But the incredible thing is that the chart, I used it less than 20% of the time. It was just a moment. It's always on my left, never my right, and it's always at the end of the speech. So here we have it. It's on the right, not the left. It's at the beginning, not the end. And even the people that put it up, they were unprepared, and they did a great job. They got it up immediately, fortunately. But I looked to the right, and the bullet came whizzing by, hitting my ear. So it was amazing. But when you think of the odds of that, and you know that normally you wouldn't use it. Normally I wouldn't have the thing, and then it would have been a very different story. It's very much. I say an act of God. It's a miracle that it happened, and I'm honored by it. I'm honored by it.
What were you about to say about illegal immigration before you were rudely interrupted?
Well, I was going to say how good the numbers were. By the way, we're going back to Butler, and we're going to go back in October. We're all set up, and the people are fantastic in Butler. It's a great area. Great. These are incredible people. Like the three that, in the case of Corey, killed, and the other two, the families are. I got to know them a little bit, and the families are great. But we're going back to Butler, and I think I'll probably start by saying, as I was saying. Prior to being so horribly interrupted,
so rudely interrupted by it.
No, but the chart,
some people have no manners.
Elon, the chart was just a chart that in my last week we had the best illegal immigration numbers, meaning stopping. It was at the lowest. You've seen the chart. It's become quite a famous chart, but that was the lowest point ever recorded. It was a really... I mean, I was very proud of those numbers. And then you see what happened with these people, Kamala and Joe. You see what happened. They just let it go. I had remain in Mexico policies. I had all these different policies that was so good. Guys like Tom Holman and Brandon Judd from Border Patrol. These are all people that they've been on television. They said it's the best numbers we've ever had. We had so many different checks. Catch and release in Mexico, not the United States. We had catch and release in the United States. We had it in Mexico. We had so many things. We had things where many people come in there, they have contagious diseases. We had everything passed. If you have a contagious disease, I'm sorry, but we cannot allow you into the country. So we were setting literally records, and all I was doing is showing that, and I use it sometimes, and in this case, I'm glad I used it. I can tell you that, but there were fantastic numbers. But I'm going to sleep with that chart always. I'll be sleeping with that chart. That chart was very important for a lot of reasons.
Well, I mean, would it be accurate to say that you're supportive of legal immigration, but that we also need to shut down illegal immigration, and especially unvetted illegal immigration, because and that's not the same as saying that everyone who's an illegal immigrant is bad. In fact, I think most people who are illegal immigrants are actually good, but you can't tell the difference unless there's a solid vetting of who comes across the border. Does that actually represent your position?
I say it very simply. They have to come in legally. They have to be checked. Because look, Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. Everything that I do, she's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now. They could do things right now. It's horrible. No tax on tips. And all of a sudden she's making a speech saying there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. And by the way, they had just the opposite. They had not only tax on tips, but they hired 88,000 IRS agents, and many of them were assigned to go get waitresses and caddies and all of this on tips. They have a policy. They had a policy that they were really going to go after you, and we're really harassing people horribly. And then all of a sudden, for politics, she says, she comes out with what I said, which I think is terrible, and I think it's also hitting them very hard. These people are fake. Now they're also saying they did a good job at the border. We had the worst numbers in the history of the world, not of our country. There's never been a country in history that has had a catastrophe like this. We've had, I believe, and I think you believe this too, you hear 12 million, 13. I believe it's over 20 million people came into our country, many coming from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions, or a bigger version of that is insane asylums. And many are terrorists. And I'll tell you what, they're coming not just from South America, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from all over the world, they're coming from Asia, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from countries that are stupidly and horribly bombing Israel October 7th. They're coming from all over the world. And you look at, it's so sad October 7th because it should have never happened. It's so sad when you look at Ukraine. It should have never happened. We have a defective government. These are defective people. And they're not people that should be running it. But where you see it the best is the border. Because you have millions of people coming in a month. And then she gets up and she tries to pretend like she's going to do something. She had 3.5 years. And by the way, they have another 5 months that they can do something, but they won't do anything. It's all talk. She's incompetent and he's incompetent. And frankly, I think that she's more incompetent than he is. And that's saying something because he's not too good.
Yeah. No, I think it is essential to have a secure border. I mean, you're really not a country unless you have a secure border. And
secure elections.
Absolutely secure elections. And so it's just essential to have a real border, or we can't function as a country. And our services, our central services are being overwhelmed in a lot of cities. But as we were talking about earlier, I think having a legal immigration process that is smooth and efficient and done well. And I'm, speaking as someone who is a legal immigrant, and I think that like one way to think of it is, who do you want on your team? Who do you want on Team America? And I think we want to just say, okay, we want to let in people who are going to, be great contributors to our society and to our economy, and and who do you want on the team? And it's not to say that, like in my opinion, actually, I'd say like probably most of the illegal immigrants actually are actually good, hardworking people. That's my opinion. But some are not, and you just have this sort of adverse selection process where if somebody's if somebody's like has a career in theft or robbery, I don't understand what's taken them so long to get here. Because we're in such a target-rich environment. Why aren't more people who have a career in bad things coming here sooner? Because it's a piece of cake to go rob houses in LA or New York compared to other parts of the world. And in a lot of places in America, if you try to stop the person who's robbing you, you'll be arrested.
Yeah.
So
it's right. I mean, what's happening with crime, and our police are so good, but they're not allowed to do their job. But I have to tell you, Elon, I hate to say it because it's such a downer to say it. I hate to say it. I hate it, but you have a lot of people that just shouldn't be. I think it's a much bigger number than you think. They're allowing people from their jails. And if you were running one of these countries where they're coming from, you would have had all of them. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers, they're taking, frankly, their prisoners, they're emptying out their prisons, they're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're delivering them into...
That's what Castro did.
Yeah, well, he did, on a much smaller scale. It was a much smaller scale. But this is a massive scale, because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening. Crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. This is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be... And I saw it today in New York, where somebody was knifed with raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters, and started pulling out the knives, and bad things happen today. But this is happening every day. These are rough people. These are people that are in jail for murder and all sorts of things. and they're releasing them into our country, and they're telling them, if you come back, we're going to kill you. We're going to give you the death penalty or kill you. So they don't want to come back. But these are rough people. These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people. And it's horrible what they're doing. And she's in charge of it because, now she's trying to say she had nothing to do with it. And she's such a liar because she was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there. She went to one location which had nothing to do with where the problem is. She went in and out, I guess, because she was getting a lot of press, but had nothing to do with the problem is. But she was the border czar, and people can't allow them to get away with their disinformation campaign. Now she's trying to say that she wasn't really involved, and the whole thing is horrible. She was totally in charge. She could have shut the border down without him. He didn't know what he was doing anyway, so he wouldn't have even known what happened. You could shut the border down, he wouldn't even know the difference. But the fact is that she was border czar. But if you don't have to call her that, the fact is you could just call her, she was in charge of the border, and the border was the worst ever.
It's simply not working.
No, it's horrible.
Whether it's a question of intention or competence, either way, we don't have a secure border, and we have people streaming over like it looks like a World War Z zombie apocalypse at times. And sometimes you gotta sort of wonder, like, is it real or not? So because you see things, you're like, is it real? I went to the border at Eagle Pass, and I saw for myself in Texas, and I was like, okay, it's real. I'm like seeing this in real time. I actually posted the video like just live. I just flew there one day and just to see, hey, is this made up or real? And I'm just seeing people stream across the border. And I have to say, at least the people I saw did not look friendly.
These
people can look at my video and say, hey, these people look friendly. I don't look super friendly. So
these are people that Elon would not be the same man if he had to walk across the street and look these people in the eye. These are rough people. These are really rough people coming across. And I know rough people. And these are people that we don't want in our country. And, the caravans are coming in, and they're putting, and who's doing this are the heads of the countries. And you would be doing it, and so would I. And everyone would say, oh, what a terrible thing to say. The fact is, it's brilliant for them because they're taking all of their bad people, really bad people. And I hate to say this, the reason the numbers are much bigger than you would think is they're also taking their non-productive people. Now, these aren't people that will kill you. We have enough of them. But these are people that are non-productive. They are just non-productive. I mean, for whatever reason. They're not workers, or they don't want to work, or whatever. And these countries are getting rid of non-productive people in the caravans in many cases. And they're also getting rid of their murderers and their drug dealers and the people that are really brutal people. And they're coming into our country at levels that have never been seen before. And I saw an ad just before I got on the air. I'm walking over here, and I saw an ad by Kamala saying how she is going to provide border security. Where has she been for 3.5 years? For 3.5 years.
Yeah,
We have 20 million people here. It's terrible.
Yeah, I think this, frankly, I think this is a fundamental existential issue for the United States. And if we have another 4 more years of open borders, and it's going to be even worse with another 4 more years. It's going to be even worse than it's been for the past 3.5 years. I'm not sure we've got a country.
You don't have a country left. Elon, if they get in, you will have 50 to 60 million people from all over the world, not South America only. We think of South America, we think of Honduras and El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, the 4. But it's not that. It's everywhere. They're coming in from everywhere. And I had to stay in Mexico.
Yeah, I think this is a super important point. Like, people, it's like, basically, when I went down there, I was like, well, where are people from? It's like almost no one was from Mexico.
No, Mexico left.
It's just the border. It's just the border with Mexico. But the people coming in, it's Earth. the rest of Earth. and America is only about 4 or 5% of the population of Earth. It would only take a few percent of the rest of Earth to overwhelm everything.
We're already overwhelmed, Elon. We're overwhelmed. You had to see the news tonight about New York, and I love that place, and what they're doing to it is horrible, what they're doing to it. And all the courts do is they try and focus on Trump. Okay, then let's focus on Trump, who did nothing wrong. I complain about a rigged election. Elon, what's happened is unbelievable. You have from Africa, from the Congo they're coming, from the Congo. And 22 people came in from the Congo recently, and they're murderers. And they drop them, they take them out of jails, which is very expensive, to maintain the jails, although they don't do too much maintaining, I can tell you. But they take them out of jails, prisons, they take them out and they bring them to the United States. They deposit them in the United States and say, don't ever come back or you're going to be executed. And they don't want to come back, but they won't come back.
Sure.
But they're coming from Africa, they're coming from Asia, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from South America, they're coming from everywhere. And there are a lot of really bad ones.
It's just an everywhere on Earth thing, and it's just not possible for the United States to absorb everyone from Earth, or even a few percent of the rest of Earth. It's just not possible. So
Elon, we're going to have just to finish this up. We're going to have the largest deportation in history of this country, and we have no choice. Otherwise, we're going to have a country. What they've done to our country. Think of it. With in Venezuela and in some of these other countries, crime is down 50, 60, 70, 80%. And you would be the same. You would have. I'll tell you what, Venezuela has not gotten rid of all of them. They've gotten rid of about 70% of their really bad people. Their jails are about 50% put into the United States. The same with other countries. Some are at 30%, some are at 50%. They're all different. But the bottom line is they're all going to be at 100%. Why wouldn't you put 100% of it? And they're doing it right now while this third-rate phony candidate, don't forget, I beat Biden. He failed in the debate miserably. And, some people said, oh, gee, it's too bad. It's too bad he did so badly, or I did well in the debate. The first night they said, wow, one of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed. And then 2 days later, they didn't talk about that. They just said he was bad. But that's okay. That's the way I get treated, and I don't mind that at all. What I can tell you is this. We cannot have a Democrat. We cannot have her. She's incompetent. She's as bad as Biden in a different... She hasn't done an interview since this whole scam started. And say what you want. This was a coup. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said, we can do it the nice way, or we can do it the hard way.
They just took him out back behind the shed and basically shot him.
No, what they did with this guy, and I'm no fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine. And we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan mess, if you think of it. And we wouldn't have had Afghanistan. But we think of it, you take a few of those events away and we have a different world. We would also have no inflation. Inflation was caused by oil.
I think you make an excellent point here, which is that when other countries are thinking about invading or doing bad things, when they're thinking about that, they're thinking about, okay, what's the American president going to do? And do they fear the American president? Or is there someone they do not respect and do not fear? And I think they would rightfully be. I mean, let's look at the footage of the assassination. They're like, okay, President Trump is like, don't mess with me. I mean, that's like, whereas I think people are not going to be, and they obviously have not been at all intimidated by Biden, and they certainly will not be intimidated by Kamala. And you have to really think of that in the context of global security. If the American president is someone that, evil dictators are scared of, that makes a huge difference to the security of the world.
So I had a good relationship with Putin, despite the Russia hoax that lasted for over 2 years. Just a hoax created by Hillary Clinton and Adam Shifty Schiff, some just bad people, just sick people, frankly. I mean, Schiff is a sick person. He's going to end up probably being a senator. It's hard to believe. The whole thing is hard to believe. But, they put our country in danger with that stuff, too. They actually, when they make up stories, and you have to fight your way out of it for a long time. But I know Putin very well. I got along with him very well. He respected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. I shut down Nord Stream 2. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. Biden came, and then they say, I loved Russia. I was a friend of Putin, and I loved Russia. No. He actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline. The biggest pipeline, they were looking at that to fund, and this pathetic president gets in there, and the first thing he did, one of the early things he did is he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow. I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train that catches on fire. But think of it. He shut down the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline. He shuts that down, and he approves the Russian pipeline.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. Certainly, but I mean, I think it's just worth emphasizing, to listeners, the immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security. Because there's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to do.
I know every one of them.
And it puts the whole world in danger.
Elon, I know every one of them, and I know them well. I know Putin, I know President Xi, I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people say, oh, this is terrible. He said, I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough, they're smart, they're vicious, and they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even believe it. They can't believe this happened. All the stuff that you're seeing now, all the horror that you look at Israel, they're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me. When I was there, and I say it with respect, because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. And I meant it. And they said, we'll pass, and they didn't buy oil. Other countries, likewise. You want to buy, you're not doing business with the United States. And they were at a point where they had no money for Hamas, they had no money for Hezbollah, they had no money for any of these instruments of terror. And it was amazing. In fact, there were articles when I was leaving, which is hard to believe, actually, especially when you look at what's happened to our country. Our country is so bad right now. It's such a different place. We were respected. Think of it. 4 years ago, we were so respected to a point where when I said don't buy oil, they didn't buy oil. But they had no money, and Israel would have never been attacked. Zero chance. And again, I said to Vladimir Putin, I say, don't do it. You can't do it, Vladimir. You do it, it's going to be a bad day. You cannot do it. And I told him things that what I do, and he said, no way. And I said, way. And it's the last time we ever had the conversation. He would never have done. I got along well with him. I hope to get along well with him again. Getting along well with them is a good thing, not a bad thing. I got along well with Kim Jong-un. When I met with President Obama just before entering, it's a sort of a ritual. And I sat down with him and we talked. It was supposed to be for a very short period of time. It turned out to be a long period of time. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. I had that problem worked out very quickly. It was nasty at the beginning with Rocket Man and, all the different things.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I got a call.
Those were some epic tweets, by the way.
Yeah, they were epic everything. He said that he has a red button on his desk. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but my red button is much bigger and my red button works. And then I called him Little Rocket Man, if Little Rocket Man. Anyway, here's the bottom line. All of a sudden I got a call from him.
Oh my God.
And they said they want to meet. They want to meet me. And we met, as you remember, we met in Singapore. We met also in Vietnam. And I got along with them great. We were in no danger. But President Obama thought we were going to end up in a war, a nuclear war with him. And let me tell you, he's got a lot of nuclear stuff. He's got plenty of nuclear. He can do plenty of damage. So
yes, I mean it's because people like Kim Jong-un, they respond to strength, not weakness.
Well,
he and I had a great relationship.
Remember I met him and we walked onto his land. Nobody ever walked onto his land before. I wouldn't say, bring up Secret Service again, I wouldn't say they were thrilled when I did that. I walked onto his land, and it was an amazing period. But we were not in danger with him because of me. I always say that we have enemies on the outside and we have enemies on the inside. We have some really bad people in our government and people that are, and controlling of the people. I mean, I'd mention names, but I really don't want to give them the credit. But we have some really bad, and I say they're more dangerous than Russia and China. If you have a smart president, a president that gets it, we are not in danger from those countries because they need us and they need our help. I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden, and Bush to a certain extent, in all fairness, forced Russia and China together. And if you're a history student, the first thing you learn is you cannot let Russia and China align. But then they also got, if you take a look, Iran, and they have North Korea. That's, they call it the axis of evil. In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern-day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat. The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming, because we have 5 countries now that have significant nuclear power. And we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden. Biden did something with Russia. There was no chance of him ever going in. And when I left, and then after I left, they started forming big armies on the border with Ukraine, right? And I looked at that, and I thought he was doing that because Putin's a good negotiator. I thought he was doing that to negotiate. But then Biden started saying such stupid things. For instance, he said that it can be a NATO country. Now, Russia, for as long as there's been NATO, has said we're never going to agree to that. And we go right up front and say that. And we did things and said things through this president with a low IQ, very low IQ. He had a low IQ 30 years ago, by the way, but now he might not even have a IQ at all. There's nothing on the board that goes this low. He said things that were so stupid that war had zero chance of happening if I were there. Zero chance. He was saying everything the opposite. And it's so sad because many more people have been killed in Ukraine than you read about. You don't read about how bloody it is and how disastrous. Hey, look, just in the 2 armies, you lost 500,000 people. And Ukraine's having a hard time. Ukraine, I don't know if you saw the article recently, and it's true. You don't hear the true story. But if you think about it, Russia's gone, Russia defeated Germany with us, and they defeated Napoleon. They've been around a long time. They're a big fighting force, and it's very unfair. And Ukraine now doesn't have enough men. They're now using young men and very old men to fight. And we're in a very bad position, and I'm not going to blame exclusively, but I can tell you I could have stopped that, and a smart president could have stopped that. It wouldn't have happened. But we had a man that actually made it it made it more prevalent. It was so bad. The words that he was using, the stupid threats coming from a stupid face that he was using. I said, this guy's going to cause us a war. He's going to cause us. And let me tell you, it can lead to World War III. That can lead to World War III. The Middle East can lead to. We have numerous places that could end up in World War III right now for no reason whatsoever.
I think you're right. I think people underrate the risk of World War III, and it's just when looking at the risk of global thermonuclear warfare, it's game over for humanity, and it's something that people have, I think, after the end of the Cold War, people have become complacent about, but they actually have forgotten that there are currently a lot of nuclear missiles that have targeting parameters for the United States from other countries.
And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to build an Iron Dome over us. Israel has it. We're going to have the best Iron Dome in the world. We need it, and we're going to make it all in the United States. But we're going to have protection, because it just takes one maniac to start something. We're going to have protection, and we're going to have. Why shouldn't we have an Iron Dome? Israel has one. Some other places have one that nobody even knows about, frankly. But Israel has it. We're going to have an Iron Dome. But, with all of that being said, to me, that's so important, the most important. But with all of that being said, the election's coming up, and the people want to hear about the economy and the fact that they can't buy groceries because they don't have enough money to buy groceries. The inflation has killed them. Food prices are up 50, 60, even 100% in some cases. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen, and it's a shame. And that's the thing that people most care about, in my opinion. They care about the border a lot, and we discuss the border at great length. It's nice to have a forum like this where I can discuss something at length. And by the way, you think Biden could do this interview? Do you think that Kamala could do this interview? They would take a pass on you.
No, they cannot.
So they don't need Elon. They don't need Elon screaming out questions. It's pretty sad when you think that somebody that does this for a living can't answer a question or is afraid to do an interview. And in her case, with a very friendly interview, she's got all friendly interviewers. It's pretty.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
the big thing now is the economy, Elon. And as much as I view nuclear as the single most important thing, but a lot of people don't understand that. But it doesn't have to. If I understand it, that's all you need. Because if I was president, you're not going to have that kind of a problem. But the thing that they really is making them angry is what Kamala and Biden have allowed to happen to the economy. It's a disaster with inflation. The inflation, it doesn't matter what you make. The inflation has eaten you alive. If you're a worker or if you're just a middle-income person, you can't afford. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, people were saving a lot of money. Today, they're using all their money and borrowing money just to live. It's a horrible thing that's happening. And we'll end that quickly.
Well, I think a lot of people just don't understand where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from government overspending because the checks have a balance when it's written by the government. So if the government spends far more than it brings in, that increases the money supply. And if the money supply increases faster than the rate of goods and services, that's inflation. So really, we need to have we need to reduce our government spending, and we need to re-examine. I think we need like a government efficiency commission to say like, hey, where are we spending money that's sensible? Where is it not sensible? And we need to live within our means. We're currently adding, I think, $1 trillion to the deficit roughly every 100 days. And the interest payments on the national debt have now exceeded the defense budget. It's on the order of $1 trillion.
It's interesting.
And it keeps growing.
I rebuilt our military, largely rebuilt our military, did a great job on it, which was so important. We had jets, we had fighters that were, and bombers that were 70 years old. And we did a great job in that. Then we gave 85 million of it back to Afghanistan, if you can believe it. We gave them 85 million. They're one of the largest sellers of military equipment in the world. They're selling what we gave them. That was one of the most embarrassing days in the history of our country. But if you think about, let's go back to the economy. We have to bring energy prices down. Energy started it. The price of gasoline Now your cars don't require too much gasoline, so you have a good, and you do make a great product. I have to say, I have to be honest with you. But that doesn't mean everybody should have an electric car. But these are minor details. But your product is incredible. But the gasoline, Elon, is the cost of energy. Not only gasoline, it's the cost of heating your house and cooling your house. That has to come down. It's gone up 100%, 150, and 200%, and that has to come down. When that comes down, and we're going to drill, baby, drill. They stopped drilling, and then they went back to drilling because they went back to the Trump policy. But if they won the day after they get into office, this country will go out of business because they're going to go to an energy policy that's not sustainable. Wind and different things. You're not going to have any. Yeah. And I know you're a big fan of the AI. And I have to say that AI, and this is shocking to me, but AI requires twice the energy that the country already produces for everything. So we're going to have to build a lot of energy if our country will be competitive with China, because that's our primary competitor for this on the AI. You're going to need a lot of electricity. You're going to need tremendous electricity, like almost double what we produce now for the whole country, if you can believe it.
Sure. Well, just going back to this, like this basic thing, which that people try to make it sound complicated, but it's not. But inflation is caused by government overspending. Would you agree that we need to take a look at government spending and have perhaps like a government efficiency commission that just tries to make the spending sensible and so that the country lives within its means, just like a person.
The waste is incredible, and nobody negotiates prices. You used to have a lot of people making jets, and you end up with two companies, and they'll probably try and merge at some point. I went through it. Like Air Force, just a thing like Air Force One. One of the first documents they asked me to sign in General, I said, "Sir, would you please sign this document?" And what is it? Air Force One. That's with Boeing, which is basically two planes, two 747s. And the price was $5.7 billion for two planes. Now they're highly sophisticated. They're even nicer than your plane, okay? But much more sophisticated. They're very, I won't say what's on it, but they got a lot of stuff on it. Anyway, but it's 5.7.
That's a
crazy number. But I said, I'm not going to pay 5.7. I'm not going to do it. I said, who made the deal? Obama and his people. I said, well, then I know the deal's no good. I'm not going to do it. And over a course of about 4 weeks, by my saying I'm not going to do it, I got the price reduced by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane, other than we had a nicer paint job, if you want to know the truth. But for the exact same plane, I saved for it. And I said to Boeing, man, you guys must make a lot of money if you can reduce the price by that. But now what I do hear is that they're going back to the Biden administration and wanting big cost overruns, because they see these dopey suckers in there, and they'll end up getting some of the money back. But I shaved it by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane. And you can now take that and multiply that out times thousands of other items. And the numbers are astronomical. I agree with you.
Well, I think it would be great to just have a government efficiency commission that takes a look at these things and just ensures that the taxpayer money, the taxpayers' hard-earned money, is spent in a good way. And I'd be happy to help out on such a commission.
I'd love it
if it were formed.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, you want to quit? They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, that's okay, you're all gone. You're all gone. So every one of you is gone, and you are the greatest. You would be very good. Oh, you would love it. But, if you look at Argentina,
Well, if you have to help
by the way,
out.
congratulations. I just looked at the number of people that are listening to you and I chat. We'll call it a chat. But congratulations. This is very good. It's great. And you're an interesting character. The new head of a place called Argentina, and he's a big, he's great, and he's a big MAGA fan, that he ran on MAGA, and he took it to an extreme too. He ran on MAGA, and I hear he's doing really a terrific job. It's called Make Argentina Great Again. It worked out perfectly. He came in, he bought a lot of hats, he brought everything, but he's doing a big job. He really cut And I'm hearing they're starting to do pretty well. Inflation's getting down. You know, they had like 2,000%. And they had inflation like not normal inflation. They had the real deal. But we're going to have that pretty soon. I think we have the worst inflation we've had in 100 years. They say it's 48 years. I don't believe it. I think we have the worst. They don't include a lot of the items that should be included, you know.
Yeah, well, it's just from government overspending and not spending taxpayer money effectively, and having just like so many departments you can't even name them all, and what Millet is doing is he's cutting government spending, he's simplifying things, he's putting in regulations that make sense, and Argentina overnight is experiencing a giant improvement in prosperity. But it's also a lesson for the United States, which is that Argentina used to be one of the most prosperous countries in the world. In the 30s, 40s, and because of bad government policy, it ruined the country. And if you take Venezuela, for example, Venezuela should be incredibly prosperous. They have phenomenal reserves of everything, oil, everything, and it should be prosperous. But if the government's wrong, it impoverishes the people. And so I think we should not be complacent in the United States and thinking that and taking our prosperity for granted, because if with bad government policy we can run the country into the ground, and that's just something people should bear in mind. Don't take prosperity for granted.
Well, think of education. So we're ranked at the bottom of every list of the top 40. We're ranked number 40, number 38. Norway, Switzerland, Sweden, different countries are ranked good. Actually, China's pretty close to the top. They're a top 6 or 7. But we're ranked at the bottom, almost at the bottom, 38, 39, 40. In other words, horrible. And yet we spend more per pupil than any other country in the world. So we spend more. And what I'm going to do, one of the first acts, and this is where I need an Elon Musk, I need somebody that has a lot of strength and courage and smarts. I want to close up Department of Education, move education back to the states, where states like Iowa, where states like Idaho, not every state will do great, because states that basically aren't doing good now. You look at Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. He's terrible. He does a terrible job. So he's not going to do great with education. But of the 50, I would bet that 35 would do great, and 15 of them, or 20 of them will be as good as Norway. Norway is considered great. You can name them. I mean, they're so good. Some of these countries are so good. But if you go into some of these really well-run states, we have states that don't know what debt is. We have states that have low taxes, no debt, everybody working. They're really well-run. Sure. And maybe they have certain advantages in terms of location, in terms of, the land or the sun. The sun and the water and the whole thing. There are a lot of advantages to some people. But if you moved education back to the 50, you'll have some that won't do well, but they'll actually be forced to do better, because it'll be a pretty bad situation. But if you think about it, you'll have some of these states. I'll bet you'd have 30, 35 states. It'll be much better. And you know what it'll cost? Less than half what it is in Washington. And these people don't care about students in these, faraway states. And it'd be unbelievable.
Yeah. I think you're making a good point in that if the states have to if each state has to compete against other states, then people will naturally move to states where it's better.
Well, like California, as we said, it's a badly run state. I could go through. I got so many friends that are in those states, even if they're Democrats. I hate to mention certain states, but Illinois is badly run with Pritzker. He's a real loser. But some of these places are just badly run. But it's almost going to force them to run better, and they won't do good initially. But you're not going to do worse than you're doing right now. And I would say you would cut your cost by 50 or 60%. And you have a little monitor. You know, you want to make sure they're teaching English as an example. You know, give us a little English, right?
Sure, right? No. I mean, some of these governors are doing so badly. I mean, they got so many people moving out of their state. They should get U-Haul Salesman of the Year award because they're driving so much U-Haul.
It's actually amazing.
People moving out.
Isn't it amazing to you as a businessman that they can even survive? Like Illinois. So many people are leaving, and you wonder, how do they survive? I mean, how do they survive? I saw where you left California, and you moved to Texas. Texas does a great job. But, you know, I mean, I just wonder, how do these states survive when big businesses, a big oil company just left California, as you know, and they moved to Texas. How do these big states survive when they lose so many businesses? And their taxes are already really high. You know, their taxes are among the highest taxes. You almost wonder, how do they continue on? And in many cases, the governors don't do a good job, and they're crime-ridden places. You wonder, how do they continue to just go on? It's not a good situation.
I think the only thing that's going to force some of these states to change is if they risk bankruptcy and they're not getting bailed out by the federal government.
Right. Well,
That's the only thing that's going to get them changed.
you remember the area in California where they had that, where I guess somebody had sticky fingers and they stole a lot of money, and they went into a form of chapter, and it was very nasty for a period of time. But now it's probably the most popular place in all of California. So you know, at some point, something like that may have to happen. But the problem is, you can't penalize people that loan money to the state when you have incompetent people like a Pritzker. Look, the family didn't want him in the family business, and then he ends up being governor of Illinois. So you know what? Is he going to be a great governor? And you know, you have people. I could name every one of them. I got to know every one of these, and some are very good, and some are just horrible.
Well, I think that, I mean, the larger point here, too, you know, as you're saying, like, a lot of people are concerned about the economy, a lot of people are concerned about inflation, and inflation is effectively a tax on people that save money and for people that are working day to day. It's just a form of taxation. And if we can solve the government spending problem, we'll solve the inflation problem, which means people will have a better standard of living, and that's a really big deal.
Well, the people that got hurt worse are the people that did it the way they were taught to do it all through, you know, their younger life and their young life and their whole life. The people that saved money, and then they got no interest on their money, and inflation destroyed them. And frankly, they were almost better off if they didn't do anything like that. I mean, those people have been absolutely decimated, and we're going to bring those people back and help those people. We've got to get the prices down. You know, when I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years ago. When you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, you know, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at it's sticker shock. They call it sticker shock, right?
I think it really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves the living standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason, but unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think the opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation, and if those two things, yeah. Those are the big deals.
We set a record. We did more deregulation and more restrictions on all of the different businesses than any other president. Remember, I had the rule for everyone we put in, you have to get rid of 10 or 12. And we did radical cuts on all of that, and a lot of that's being put back by this administration. And we did radical cuts on things that weren't necessary. But we were all set. You know, we had the best economy ever maybe in the world, and then what happened is COVID came in, and we had to focus on that, and nobody knew what it was. And I always say I got good marks on economy, good marks on military. We knocked out ISIS. We did so many different things. We rebuilt. But, I never got the credit that we really deserved on what we did with COVID. We never got the credit. But had that not happened, the gift from China, from Wuhan, came in from Wuhan, the Wuhan labs, and I always said it, and it turned out to be right. But had that not happened, we were set to start reducing debt. We were going to reduce taxes further. I gave the largest tax cuts, and we were going to reduce taxes still further for middle-income people, not only businesses. But we did it for businesses because they're the ones that's why we had the great job numbers. But we were set to really start reducing debt. And, we're sitting on the biggest pile of liquid gold anywhere in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia. And we were going to drill, and we were going to make so much money. We were going to supply Europe with oil. I had stopped the Russian pipeline, and we were going to supply them with oil and gas. We were going to make a fortune. And then the COVID came in, and we really had to divert. Then what happened is when they came in, we kept a lot of businesses alive. If I didn't do what we did, we would have had a 1929 type depression. But the problem is when Biden came in, he got trillions of dollars and just started spending it stupidly. You didn't need it anymore. We got over that bad period where everybody was dying and it was just not a good period. Interestingly, during his administration, many more people died during his administration of COVID than during my administration, and we really got the brunt of it. But people don't realize more people died during his administration than ours. But it diverted us from doing what I wanted to do. But we had the greatest for, almost 3 years. We had the great, and you know that probably better than anybody. So many of your friends said to me, the best years we've ever had in business were during the Trump years. And also said that African American, Hispanic American were so incredible. They were having the best. Asian American women, men, young people without a diploma, young people that graduated from the best colleges, from MIT, from the Wharton School, from all of the great colleges, Harvard. They were doing better, and people without a diploma were doing better. And everybody was happy. And then COVID came, and we had the problem is they spent trillions and trillions of dollars. They wasted. They shouldn't have taken any money, and we wouldn't be having inflation right now, which is killing our country.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should probably say something about, maybe my views on, climate change and oil and gas, because I think I'm probably different from what most people would assume, because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving and the economy would collapse. So it's, I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry, the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other countries, and it would help with prosperity in the U.S. And at the same time, obviously, my view is like we do over time move to a sustainable energy economy, because eventually you run out of. You run out of oil and gas. It's not there. It's not infinite. And there is some risk. I think the risk is not as high as a lot of people say it is with respect to global warming. But I think if you just keep increasing the parts per million in the atmosphere long enough, eventually it actually simply gets uncomfortable to breathe. People don't realize this. If you go past 1,000 parts per million of CO2, you start getting headaches and nausea. And so we're now in the sort of 400 range. We're adding, I think, about roughly 2 parts per million per year. So, it still gives us, so what it means is we still have quite a bit of time. But so it's not like we don't need to rush, and we don't need to stop farmers from farming or prevent people from having steaks or basic stuff like that. Like you leave the farmers alone.
I agree. How crazy is that? Where I mean, you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle, and the whole world is a little crazy. But it's largely taken its lead from us. I do say though, I've heard in terms of the fossil fuel, because even to create your electric car and create the electricity needed for the electric car, fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to. But I do hear we have anywhere from 100 to 500 years left. Much of it hasn't even been found yet.
Yeah.
But there are tremendous, like ANWR. I got ANWR in Alaska approved. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. The first thing that Biden did was unimprove it, to get rid of it. He ended it. His secretary went in and she ended it. And what a disgrace. That's ANWR. That's bigger, or they think it could be bigger than Saudi Arabia in Alaska. Could be bigger than Saudi Arabia. But they went in and they terminated it, and I'll get it going very quickly, because not only is it big for Alaska, I mean, you talk about economic development, that for the United States, I mean, that is, they say bigger than Saudi Arabia or the same size, and pure, really good stuff. And, they end it. So I think we have, perhaps hundreds of years left. Nobody really knows. But during that time, some people come around that will be very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my estimate would be, a little more aggressive than that, but it's not the sort of like we're all going to die in 5 years stuff. That's obviously BS. But I mean, my view is like if you just look at sort of the parts per million that increments every year, you get sort of 2 or 3 parts per million every year of CO2. I mean, I think some of that it's problematic if it accelerates. If you start going from 2 or 3 to say 5, and then there may be some situations where you get to just a step change increase in the CO2. And I think we don't want to get too close to 1,000 ppm, because like that's actually makes it uncomfortable to breathe. Like just existing in 1,000 ppm CO2 is uncomfortable. That's like that's considered like an industrial hazard, right? Just so it's that's actually start getting headaches and stuff. So it's even without global warming, it's not comfortable to live. So you don't want to get too close to that. But I mean, I think I think we want to just move over, like, and if I don't know, 50 to 100 years from now, we're I don't know, mostly sustainable. I think that'll probably be okay. So it's not like the house is on fire immediately, but I think it is something we need to move towards. And on balance, it's probably better to move there faster than slower, but like I said, without vilifying the oil and gas industry and without causing hardship in the short term. I think this can be done without, people can still have, a stake, and they can still drive gasoline cars, and it's okay. It's like, it's not, I don't think we should vilify people for it, but I think we should just generally lean in the direction of sustainability. I actually think solar is going to be a majority of Earth's energy generation in the future, and it's certainly trending that way. And so you get the solar power, combine that with batteries, so because obviously the sun doesn't shine at night, and then you use that to charge the electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what Tesla's trying to move things towards, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that environmentalism, that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make sure that our cars are beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, that they're sexy. I mean, they're cool. In fact, literally, the sexy joke, Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke out there. But I don't know, I like cheesy humor, so But I'm a big fan of like, let's have an inspiring future, and let's work towards a better future, and we can do so without demonizing.
Right. I'm okay. It's very interesting. You use the word global warming, and today they use the word climate change because, you have some places that go up. And so they were getting themselves in a little trouble with the word global warming because not every place is warming. Some places are going the opposite direction. But, I'm sort of waiting for you to come up with solar panels on the roofs of your cars and on the trunks of the cars. And it just seems like something that at some point you will come up with. I'm sure you'll be the first. But it would seem that a solar panel on the roofs, on flat surfaces, on certain surfaces might be good.
Yeah.
At least in certain areas of the country where you have the world,
Sure.
where you have the sun. But I would think, and I have no idea because that's not my world, but I would think that this would be something that would be interesting. But the one thing that I don't understand is that people talk about global warming or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me, that's an immediate problem. Because you have, as I said, 5 countries where you have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president, because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number 1, and we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that, you're not surprised to hear very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even surpassing. But to me, the biggest problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's, a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. And when I talk about I'll prevent World War III, I will. But the truth is that you have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is underrated.
You're right.
And it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. And if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I'm not trying to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining operation, and this was a number of injuries and deaths per year. You compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done. So that,
maybe they'll have to change the name. The name is it's a rough name. There are some areas like when you see what happened.
Good bad branding.
We'll have to rebrand it. We'll have to give it a good name. We'll name it after you or something. It has a branding problem. When you see what happened.
It does have a branding problem.
When you see what happened in Japan, where they say you won't be able to go on the land for about 3,000 years. Did you ever see that? And in Russia, where they had the problem, where they, there's a lot of bad things happened, and they have a problem. And they say that in 2,000 years, people will start to occupy the land again. You realize it's pretty bad.
No, that's not true.
But you're right about it.
It's actually not that bad. So like after Fukushima happened in Japan, people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. And I donated a solar water treatment, a solar powered system for a water treatment plant. And
but you haven't been feeling so well lately, and I'm worried about it.
No, but I mean,
I'm
fine. It's like. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that So it's not as scary as people think, basically. But let's see. I mean, are there some other topics we should touch on? Like lawfare. I think we need to be concerned about
what they've done to this country.
Obviously,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we just won the big case in Florida. This was a Biden administration did something that's never been done in this country, and that's go after their political opponent, me, with this nonsense and just nonsense. And the big case in Florida we won, but they always pick a judge and a jury, and they use the local DAs, they use the local attorney generals, like Fani, Fani, spelled Fani, Fani. And it's all a big hoax, and it's all run from there. Like in Manhattan, one of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state. The Letitia James deal was run by a person from the Department of Justice, Biden. They've never done this before, and they set up a very bad precedent. It's called lawfare, warfare. It's a terrible thing, and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics and third world countries, but it's never happened. And the incredible thing is it actually drove my numbers up because people see, fortunately I have a platform like you, or, in all fairness, like a conversation like this, where I can talk about it and people understand. I mean, you fight for election integrity and you end up getting indicted because you're fighting for election integrity. And when the day comes that you can't fight for election integrity, you don't have a country anymore. So what happens is they went after their political opponent, me. Now, Biden's, close to vegetable stage, in my opinion, okay? I looked at him today on the beach, and I said, why would anybody allow him? The guy could barely walk. Why would anybody allow him? Does he have a political advisor that thinks this looks good? He thinks this looks good because it looks so bad, and it's ridiculous. I mean, and he's been doing that for a long time. He can't lift the chair. The chair weighs about 3 ounces. It's meant for children and old people to lift, and he can't lift it. The whole thing is crazy.
Well, he's clearly like we just don't have a president. Right?
You don't have a president, and she's going to be worse than him because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as Attorney General, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original Attorney General in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states there, you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put them, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our country is becoming a very dangerous place. And she is a radical left San Francisco liberal, and now she's trying to protect, now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than Trump.
Yeah.
I want a wall.
I think that's,
she wants to release all the prisoners that are in detention, and some of these guys are really bad.
Right.
That just came out today. She doesn't want to build the wall, even though the walls work. Walls and wheels. In your business, everything you do is obsolete, almost, well, not the tunnels, but everything is obsolete. Even your rocket ships, they're like a month later, they're obsolete. You find a better way to. The only thing that's not obsolete is a wall and a wheel. And the wall, I built hundreds of miles of wall, and that's why we had such good numbers. I was going to add 200 miles. We bought it. We could have flipped it up in 3 weeks, and they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. That meant, I said, wow, that means that they actually do want to have open borders. She wants to have open borders, and now she's going like she's tough on the border. It's such a lie.
yeah, this is simply not true. This is simply not
And
true.
everybody knows
It's simply
it's
not
not true. It's a disgrace that she can say it.
No, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far left.
Worse than Bernie Sanders. She is considered more liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic, and if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. Now all of a sudden she's saying, no, I really want to see fracking. if they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. Like the Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him, both sides. That was a hard thing to do, unification.
Yeah, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What does that say?
I think it's highly disrespectful. And I say, if you're a Jewish person or if you believe in Israel, if you're a person that, is very pro-Israel, if you vote for her, it's worse than Biden. And Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined. And you see tonight, as we're doing this, I'm seeing reports coming that they expect an attack tonight or tomorrow from hundreds and maybe thousands of rockets. Their Iron Dome, as they call it, as we all call it, but their shield that they build, that can be swamped. We'll use the term that's appropriate, swamped. But they swamp it by shooting enough missiles. You know this better than anybody. By shooting enough missiles, they can't defend themselves. They just obliterate the whole place. And that's what some people think they're looking to do. And we have no leadership. There's no respect for the United States of America with these people. And I'm telling you, she'll be worse than him because she's a believer in being radical left, and he wasn't.
I think you're right. It really. It's important for the public that maybe listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before and far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she.
Je suis désolé.
In fact, is not moderate.
Il y a beaucoup de
running mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms, okay? Now, that's what...
Et ce con de Thierry Breton est en train de réussir son coup de nous empêcher d'écouter Trump. Ouh, ça fait mal. Ça fait mal. Bon, je crois que je vais m'arrêter là. Ah, les cons. Ah, il chauffe trop, putain.